The truth is, sometimes I resent being alive. It's not the pain, or the nightmares, but the whisper that tells me I didn't deserve it. And the worst part? My hands, these crippled things, still remember the exact moment I chose to let go. I turned 83 last week. Lena, bless her, brought a cake shaped like a satellite phone, though she'd iced it electric ice blue instead of the dull military green it actually was. She still tries to make me laugh. She always did. My joints crack when I stand now, like dry wood. I move slowly, deliberately. Every gesture is a negotiation with time. This body, this shell, it holds memories not just in its failing functions, but in the places that healed crooked, the places that never quite thawed. The right hip still pulls when it rains, a phantom echo of the ice-slicked rock face that crumbled beneath me. My left ear, the permanent whistle, like a distant wind through a broken pipe. The cold, that's where it starts. The cold and the crimson. It was February, that year. 37 years ago now, I suppose. God, how the time runs. We were deployed, a rapid response medical unit. Elias, that was me. Field medic, search and rescue specialist. They airlifted us into the mountains, high in the Sylvanian range. A seismic event, they said. A mine collapse. Remote, inaccessible. The kind of place where even the trees seemed to lean away from human presence. When we landed, the air was sharp, thin. It cut into your lungs. The snow, endless and pristine, was soon tracked by the crimson outlines of emergency vehicles, the flicker of lights against the vast, unforgiving white. Everything was either stark white or that urgent, pulsing red of crisis. Our initial briefing was a blur of numbers, schematics, grim faces. Dr. Elias, the chief medical officer, a man whose uniform always looked too pristine for the field, spoke of triage, of the critical 96-hour window. He'd point to the electric ice blue lines on the thermal scans, indicating pockets of warmth, of possible life, buried under tons of rock and ice. We were told there were 23 miners unaccounted for. Maybe more. The first 3 days were pure adrenaline. No, that's not quite right. It wasn't adrenaline. It was a kind of hyper-focused clarity, an absence of everything but the task. You moved. You dug. You listened. The only sounds were the whine of the drills, the crunch of our boots, the crackle of the radios, and the rhythmic beat of your own heart against your ribs, a drum against the silence. Lena was with me. She was younger then, all sharp edges and an unyielding will. She worked the comms, managed our dwindling supplies, monitored our vitals. Her face was usually smudged with dirt, a streak of electric ice blue marker where she'd accidentally touched her forehead after annotating a map. She had a way of looking at me, even in the middle of all that chaos, that was both a question and an anchor. Like, are we really doing this, Elias? And we are doing this, Elias. She was the reason I ate, the reason I slept. A few hours, huddled in a makeshift shelter, smelling of damp rock and antiseptic, the faint crimson glow of a heating lamp our only comfort. We found the first few. Barely. Their faces, gray with dust and fear, hollowed out. We stabilized them, got them out. Each success felt like a tiny defiance against the mountain's indifferent roar. And then, deep inside, past the first major fissure, where the air grew heavy with the smell of damp earth and something acrid, like ozone, or burnt wiring, that's when the satellite phone buzzed. A faint signal, a miracle. It was from Sector Gamma. 6 men, trapped behind a secondary collapse. Low on oxygen. They had one small medical kit, enough water for a day, maybe. The voice on the other end was rough, choked. We have an injured man. Internal bleeding. Please. We need a medic. The real mistake here is thinking there's a good choice to be made when both options are terrible. You're standing there, dust in your teeth, the hum of the earth above you a constant threat, and someone is asking you to choose. Not between good and bad, but between two shades of impossible. Most people misunderstand this, but you don't save people because you're a hero. You save them because, for a moment, you forget your own fear. You move, because not moving means you have to sit with the thought of doing nothing, and that's often worse than the thing itself. Dr. Elias was on the main channel, his voice surprisingly calm despite the situation. Elias, what's your assessment? Can you reach them within the hour? I looked at Lena. Her face was grim, lit by the weak glow of the satellite phone's screen. Distance is close to 2 kilometers, Dr. Elias. Through unstable rock. It's a crawl, not a walk. And the injured man? Prognosis? Without immediate intervention, slim, I said, my voice hoarse. But we have to get him out to operate. There was another tremor then, a low rumble that made the loose rocks around us shiver. A cloud of fine dust rained down. Lena instinctively pulled her helmet closer. Elias, our primary mission is to assess the main shaft, Elias's voice cut through the static. Our priority is to contain the main breach. He paused. Focus your efforts on the primary objective. We cannot risk the main team for a secondary pocket. My blood went cold. He was telling me to abandon them. To focus on the bigger picture. The numbers. The optics. I still hear that man's voice, sometimes. That plea. I close my eyes and I see his face, though I never saw it then. Just a voice, crackling across thousands of miles. I remember the weight of the satellite phone in my hand. It was cold, metallic. And I remember my own breath, suddenly loud in my ears. I opened my mouth to argue, but Lena's hand, calloused and firm, closed around my wrist. A subtle shake of her head. No, Elias, it was a warning. A survival instinct. We had 4 days of supplies left for our team of 3. Our primary mission was indeed the main shaft. To go after those 6 men would be to risk everything, including our own ability to help anyone else, should another collapse occur. It would be a suicide mission, plain and simple. Understood, Dr. Elias, I said, the words tasting like ash. Proceeding to main shaft assessment. Sector Gamma is inaccessible for now. The voice on the phone went silent. Just static. A beat later, it cut out completely. Lena didn't look at me. She just pointed to a faint trace of electric ice blue spray paint on the rock face ahead. Main shaft is this way. We should move. That night, huddled in our rough-hewn cave, I couldn't sleep. The cold seeped into my bones. Lena was slumped against the rock, her breathing slow and deep, her face serene even in sleep. I watched her, and I hated myself. I had listened. I had made the right choice. The logical choice. The one that minimized risk to the most people, including us. And it felt like a betrayal. A crimson stain on my conscience. The following morning, as we were working our way through a newly opened fissure, I found it. Not a survivor, but a section of a collapsed support beam. It wasn't fractured from the earthquake itself, not cleanly. It was corroded. Rust, deep and insidious, had eaten through the core. And nearby, tucked into a crevice, was a small, sealed plastic container. Inside, a logbook. Not official. A miner's personal record. It detailed repeated complaints about the structural integrity of this particular section. Corrosion in the support beams. Neglected. Ignored. Months of entries. Each one a desperate plea for repairs. Each one met with silence from management. Actually, wait. I knew something was wrong even before I found the logbook. The way the rock had sheared, it wasn't just a clean break from a tremor. There was a weakness, a structural fault line that felt engineered. Or rather, unengineered. Like something had been allowed to fester. The logbook just gave it a name, a date, and a terrifying human truth. I stared at the last entry, scrawled in faint pencil, detailing a final warning, dated just 3 weeks before the collapse. The anomaly was undeniable. I couldn't unknow what I had found. I didn't show Lena the logbook immediately. Not then. The air was too thick with dust and the smell of death. We were still trying to find survivors in the main shaft, even though hope was fading. I just tucked the notebook into my pack, the thin paper feeling heavier than rock. What strikes me at this point is the way a simple object, a worn notebook, can suddenly reframe an entire catastrophe. It's not just a natural disaster anymore. It's a preventable tragedy. It's no longer just bad luck. It's something worse. And that shift, from chaotic nature to deliberate negligence, changes everything. It changes the way you look at the rubble, at the faces of the survivors, at the heroes on the ground. It makes you feel a kind of cold, internal burn that no amount of external warmth can ever reach. We spent another 2 days in the mine. Found 2 more survivors. They were weak, terrified, but alive. We brought them out. Our mission was officially over. The official death toll for the site was 16. 17, if you counted the man from Sector Gamma, though his group was never officially acknowledged. That number, it still echoes. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I trace it in the dust on my old wooden desk. 16. Not 23. 16. When we finally got back to the temporary field hospital, a sea of white tents and the electric ice blue glow of diagnostic screens, Dr. Elias was everywhere. Giving interviews. Speaking of heroism, of sacrifice. He was wearing a fresh uniform, his face clean-shaven. He looked like the hero, the man in charge. But he had been safe, mostly. Directing from above. Not crawling through darkness. I found him in his command tent, the air thick with the smell of instant coffee and the hum of generators. A single photograph sat on his desk, a smiling woman, a child. His family. I pulled the logbook from my pack, its edges dog-eared. Dr. Elias, I said, my voice flat. I found this in Sector Epsilon, near the main support beam fracture. He barely looked up from his tablet. Yes, Elias. We're debriefing now, you should be getting some rest. I pushed the notebook across the makeshift table. Read the last few pages. He sighed, a slight impatience in his posture. He picked it up. His eyes scanned the smudged handwriting. His face, for the briefest moment, lost its polished veneer. A flicker of something I couldn't quite name, fear. Recognition. This is, anecdotal, Elias, he said, handing it back to me. His voice was smooth again, but there was a tremor in his hand that he quickly suppressed. Local miners often keep their own records. Not official documentation. There will be an investigation into the collapse. We cannot speculate based on unverified sources. Unverified? My voice rose. This explains why the beams failed. It wasn't just the quake, Elias. This was known. It was ignored. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Elias, what you saw in there, the chaos, the danger, it can distort your perception. Focus on the facts we know. The earthquake was the primary cause. That is what the official report will state. And that is what you will confirm. His eyes held mine. A clear, unmistakable threat, disguised in professional language. The decision to act, to speak, became irreversible in that moment. But so did the realization that it would change nothing, structurally. The truth, I understood, was too expensive. I spent the next few months in various recovery rooms. First the hospital, then a rehabilitation center. The cuts healed, the hip mended, the whistle in my ear remained. Lena visited every day. She brought me books, quiet conversation. She never pressed me about the logbook, though I knew she suspected I'd found something. I just couldn't bring myself to tell her. To articulate the weight of it. How could I ask her to carry it too? My life back home, it felt small. Unbearably small. The arguments about property taxes, the mundane complaints about traffic, the casual injustices that used to stir me. They felt like echoes from another dimension. I'd walk down a perfectly safe street, and my mind would still be scanning for falling debris, for the crimson flash of warning lights, for the smell of damp earth and impending doom. The silence of my quiet apartment was a deafening roar after the constant hum of survival. I'd stop at the same corner every day without knowing why. The bench was gone. Had been for years. I just kept looking for it. Sometimes, when I looked at people, going about their lives, I wanted to scream. Not because I was angry, but because I felt like an alien. How could they not see the precariousness of it all? How could they worry about the trivialities when I had held life and death in my hands, had made a choice that still gnawed at me, every single day? Maybe you felt this too. That specific exhaustion of being right about something no one with power will act on. The way a truth, once known, warps everything. A few years passed. I left the rescue service. It wasn't honorable. It was quiet. A resignation, citing mental fatigue. Lena tried to keep me grounded. She reminded me of the good we did, the lives we saved. But the lives we didn't save, the choice I made, the knowledge I carried, that eclipsed everything. She wanted me to talk about it, to let it go. But letting it go meant letting them go, meant letting it go. And I couldn't. Not without betraying them a second time. She stayed close during recovery, but she couldn't stay close to that. One evening, I received a call. An unfamiliar number. A quiet voice. Mr. Elias. My name is Henry Davies. I was with Internal Affairs, mining sector. Retired now. I heard you were at Sylvanian. And that you found some things. He invited me for coffee. We met in a quiet cafe, the kind with worn wooden tables and the smell of old books. He was an older man, maybe Lena's age now. His eyes held a deep, tired understanding. He didn't press. He just listened. I told him about the logbook. The corrosion. Elias's dismissal. The quiet threat. Yes, he said, nodding slowly. I remember a report crossing my desk, years before Sylvanian. About irregularities in maintenance logs for that specific mine. It was filed away. Insufficient evidence. Economic impact concerns. He took a slow sip of his coffee. I tried to push it. But you hit walls, Mr. Elias. They're built high and thick. You can spend your whole life trying to chip away, and all you get is splinters. He paused. I left Internal Affairs shortly after. Said it was for family reasons. That was partly true. But mostly, it was exhaustion. The specific kind you're feeling now. I recognized it in your file. He looked at me, a glimmer of shared pain. You can be right, Mr. Elias. And still be alone. What does that feel like? To finally meet someone who understands, not just the facts, but the specific, corrosive weight of carrying those facts. It's not relief, not exactly. It's a deeper kind of exhaustion. A confirmation that the battle was real, and you weren't imagining the enemy, but also that you were always going to lose. I never spoke publicly about the logbook. The investigation, as Elias promised, concluded with the earthquake as the primary, unavoidable cause. No mention of structural negligence. No mention of the miners' desperate warnings. Dr. Elias received a commendation for his leadership. He was celebrated, the official hero. The anonymous voice from Sector Gamma, the men who died there, they were just another statistic. My thoroughness, my relentless research into every detail of the Sylvanian operation, every report, every weather pattern, it was an action. It was a compulsion. An attempt to exert control over a narrative I couldn't change. I kept digging, long after the digging was complete. Lena worried. She'd find me at all hours, poring over old news clippings, satellite images. Elias, she'd say, her voice soft, you're just hurting yourself. She was right. But the hurt felt like the only real thing left. I suppose that's the way it is. The slow integration. Not resolution, not peace. Just the dulling of the sharpest edges. The quiet acceptance that some truths are too heavy for the world to carry, so you carry them yourself. And you learn to live with the ghost limb of that knowledge, the ache that flares on cold mornings, the electric ice blue flashes of a monitor screen that never quite fades. Now, 83, my body is failing me in a myriad of small, undramatic ways. The crimson light, the ache in my hands, they are constant companions. The silence in this room, it's not empty. It's full of the voices I couldn't save, the words I couldn't say. I still don't know if I made the right choice, abandoning those men in Sector Gamma. I suppose no one ever truly knows. What I do know is the cost of living with the one I made. That small, sealed plastic container I found near the support beam, with the miner's logbook inside, I still have it. It sits in a locked box in my study, its plastic faded now, but still unmistakably electric ice blue against the dark wood. Sometimes, I take it out, just to hold it. It's lighter now, somehow, than the memory it contains. It doesn't hum with the same dreadful energy it did all those years ago. It's just a piece of plastic, containing a fragile paper truth, a truth that cost me everything and changed nothing. Was it worth it, do you think? To know. To truly know, when that knowledge only brings a quiet, relentless despair, and no one else is listening? That small plastic container, the one Elias found with the logbook inside, sitting faded in a locked box in his study, that image just sticks with me. It's such a quiet, unassuming object, yet it carries the entire crushing weight of his life. It's not a dramatic relic of a battle, just a mundane piece of evidence. And the fact that he never let it go, that he keeps it, but it's lighter now than the memory it holds, that's such a powerful, sad image. It speaks to the way truth can consume you, even when it's been tucked away and ignored by the world. My honest reaction to Elias's decision to abandon the men in Sector Gamma, as told through the quiet, knowing nod from Lena, it's a difficult one. I understand why he did it. It was the logical choice for overall survival, an impossible calculus forced by circumstance and the very real threat from Dr. Elias. But the weight of that choice, the way it corroded his life from the inside, feels like a deeper tragedy than the physical injuries he sustained. It was a choice born of survival, but it led to a life that felt like a slow death. I found myself wanting him to defy Elias, to risk everything, even though it would likely have been futile. That impossible choice, caught between self-preservation and an unshakable sense of duty, in that moment with Lena's silent warning, is heartbreaking. What do you do with a truth that breaks you, but leaves the world unchanged? If you were Elias, facing Dr. Elias and that impossible choice, would you have abandoned the men in Sector Gamma, or risked everything for a defiance that might have been futile? I keep wondering if knowing the crushing truth was worth the cost of living with it. If stories about the quiet despair of impossible choices, and the truths we carry that break us, speak to your own journey, then you belong with us. This is where we explore what it truly means to be a survivor. Do you know someone who carries a truth that feels too heavy for the world to understand, a quiet despair like Elias's logbook? Share this with them, maybe it can offer a moment of shared understanding for the burden they carry. The truth Elias knew about Sector Gamma broke him, leaving only despair. If that was the cost, would you have chosen to know, or would ignorance have been a kinder path? Tell me in the comments. If the quiet despair of Elias's heavy, unshared truth, tucked away in that faded box, resonated deeply with you, the like button is right there. If you're someone who ponders the true cost of survival, where the weight of a secret truth can break a spirit more than any physical threat, this channel is for you.